Welcome to the Stoic Podcast. Have you ever seen a married person seem to glow when someone else notices them? Today, we're diving into why, through the ancient lens of Stoicism. We'll explore how emotional gaps form in marriage, why outside attention feels magnetic, and what Stoic philosophy teaches us about protecting love, trust, and virtue. It's not about blame, it's about deeply understanding human nature so we can love more wisely. If you find this valuable, guys, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and join us on this journey of timeless wisdom.
Welcome to the deep dive. Have you ever, caught a subtle glance, maybe noticed a shift in someone's attention, and just had that feeling there was a deeper story unfolding right there? Well, today we're diving deep into some really compelling source material. It's titled Stoic Wisdom, Navigating Vulnerability in Marriage. And our mission for you, our listener, is to kind of unpack a less talk about subtle psychological pattern. It's about how people in committed relationships might become, vulnerable to external influences. We're not talking about manipulation in a, inherently negative way necessarily, but more about understanding human nature. And we're using the powerful lens of ancient Stoic philosophy to do it. The idea is to help you recognize these patterns, maybe strengthen your own relationships, and ultimately gain some wisdom from it all.
It really is remarkable, isn't it, how timeless these Stoic principles are. Figures like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, they offer such profound insights into, modern psychological vulnerabilities. And our sources, they emphasize something important. While we might discuss patterns sometimes observed more often, perhaps, in married women, the underlying principles, they apply to anyone in a committed relationship, regardless of gender. This really isn't about judgment. It's about understanding human behavior so we can make more conscious, maybe more virtuous choices.
Okay, so let's start with the observable stuff. What are the signs our source material points to? Things like a married person who's constantly checking their phone, or maybe avoiding direct eye contact with their spouse, or, they seem to visibly light up when talking to almost anyone else.
Right.
These are just random things, are they? They're often visible cues of something deeper going on. What our sources call a sort of uncomfortable truth about human needs.
Exactly. And if we place this in the bigger picture, the ancient Stoics, people like Marcus Aurelius, they were deeply, deeply concerned with understanding human nature, but not for exploitation. It was for cultivating wisdom, for living a virtuous life. Epictetus, especially, drawing from his own experiences with vulnerability, he taught that knowing human psychology is absolutely foundational for personal integrity. So this deep dive, we're going to explore these truths ethically with that thoughtful restraint that Stoicism really encourages.
Okay, so those are the signs on the surface. What's happening underneath that creates this dynamic? Our sources point to this concept called the emotional validation gap. Can you unpack that?
For sure. So many long-term marriages, they evolve. Psychologists talk about companionate love. It's that deep, affectionate bond, built on shared history, commitment. It's different from, and often maybe less intense than, that initial passionate, romantic love phase.
Right, it's stable, it's important, but maybe
different. Exactly. It's crucial, but it can sometimes leave a kind of an opening for other emotional needs to surface, to feel unmet.
Okay. So it creates a kind of void.
It's subtle but potent emotional vacuum, yeah. The source describes scenarios where maybe a spouse, perhaps totally unconsciously, stops truly seeing their partner, no longer actively pursuing them or making them feel desired or giving that unique, focused attention. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, he understood this. Humans naturally seek to fill voids. And emotional voids, they're particularly powerful. He might have seen it as, nature abhorring a vacuum. And the human heart does too.
That makes a lot of sense. So for you listening, this means maybe an outside person, could be a coworker, an online friend, steps into that emotional space. And they offer the very thing that feels missing, that genuine focused attention. They ask questions, they remember little details, they make the person feel really seen and valued.
Yeah, and that stark difference, between the familiar comfort and this fresh attention, that creates what the source calls a comparison trap.
The comparison trap.
Okay, and a critical question that comes up here is perception, isn't it?
How so?
Well, Epictetus famously taught It's not what happens to us, but how we perceive it, how we respond to it, that really matters. So in this situation, the partner's perception can shift. That comfortable familiarity, which was once valued, might start to feel like indifference.
Ouch.
While this new, maybe fleeting attention feels incredibly refreshing, validating. It's not about the objective reality necessarily, but that internal interpretation.
Right, and it's important to stress, I think, the person isn't usually setting out to deliberately harm their marriage, are they?
Generally, no, not intentionally. They're often just responding to really fundamental human needs, connection, validation.
But those perceptions, as you said, they can be so powerful.
And this is precisely where the Stoics offer a really vital warning, a caution. Our source points out that decisions in these situations, they're often made based on immediate emotions, what feels good now, rather than, a rational look at the long-term consequences. Okay. Short-term feeling versus long-term impact.
Exactly. Marcus Aurelius constantly emphasized thinking beyond that immediate gratification. He reminded himself that emotions, while totally natural, can lead us astray if they aren't checked by reason. And this emotionally driven state, if it's not grounded in reason, it inherently makes someone more, susceptible. Maybe to manipulation, maybe just to poor choices.
Okay, so let's talk about the pattern. Our sources detail a common progression. It often starts small, right? Like sharing little marital frustrations.
Yes, exactly. Things like feeling unheard, maybe lack of help with chores, or a decline in romantic gestures, small things, often.
And these complaints, they serve a kind of dual purpose.
Seems so. On one hand, they can subtly justify investing emotionally in this new connection, and on the other, perhaps more insidiously, they kind of invite the other person to position themselves as the solution.
I can give you what you're missing.
Precisely. And that new person typically responds with a just overwhelming sympathy, saying things like, "Oh, you deserve so much better," or "He simply doesn't appreciate you." Wow, yeah. That must feel incredibly validating.
Incredibly. The source likens it to water to someone dying of thirst. It feels life-saving in the moment. But the Stoics would look at that and call it a false judgment, mistaking that temporary emotional relief for genuine wisdom or true well-being.
What do they mean by false judgment?
Well, for the Stoics, wisdom isn't just knowing stuff. It's aligning your actions with virtue. And that means distinguishing between, say, fleeting pleasure and lasting inner peace, even if achieving that peace is uncomfortable sometimes. So grabbing onto that external validation feels good, but it's not true sustainable well-being.
Okay, so that leads to what the sources call emotional compartments.
Yes, you end up with the marriage compartment where you might feel unappreciated, unheard,
Right.
And then this new connection compartment where you feel highly valued, seen, understood.
And the contrast must be huge.
Huge, and it can become incredibly alluring. Almost addictive, the source suggests.
Yeah.
And what's striking here, going back to Seneca, are his profound warnings about depending on external validation for your self-worth.
Right, looking outside for that approval.
Exactly. True strength, Seneca argued. True resilience, it comes from internal validation, from your own character, your own reasoned judgment. If you lose that internal compass, your sense of worth gets tied to that external source, making you incredibly susceptible.
And this progression, as you mentioned, it's often predictable. Emotional connection ramps up.
Yeah, it escalates. Longer, more personal conversations, maybe flirting starts, deeper emotional intimacy.
But the person might rationalize it, tell themselves, "Oh, we're just friends," or "It's harmless."
Absolutely. Marcus Aurelius warned about this exact human tendency. Self-deception. Rationalizing behavior that doesn't actually align with our core values.
Like cognitive dissonance.
Precisely. Psychologically, that's what it is. The internal narrative, like I'm committed to my marriage, clashes with the actions. So to ease that discomfort, the person unconsciously changes the narrative. Things like, well, my marriage was already over anyway, or I deserve to be happy, to justify the behavior.
And then comes the really dangerous part, you said, a psychological commitment to protecting the new connection, hiding things.
Yes, hiding things from the spouse.
And what about secrets? You mentioned the Stoics had thoughts on that.
They did. They understood that secrets, especially ones involving a breach of trust, create these powerful but ultimately unhealthy bonds. Epictetus taught that what we choose to hide often reveals exactly where we're not acting virtuously, where we're out of alignment with our own principles.
So the secrets themselves deepen the reliance on the new connection.
They become a kind of emotional currency, reinforcing that separate compartment.
Okay, so our sources also detail some specific tactics that might be used to exploit these vulnerabilities. And again, the point is recognizing them, not using them.
Absolutely. Recognition for wisdom's sake.
So first, strategic availability. What's that?
Basically, being available when the spouse isn't. Quick texts during the day, maybe calls during lunch breaks, remembering small events the spouse might forget, filling the gaps.
Okay, then emotional mirroring.
This is about positioning oneself as the direct opposite of the spouse's perceived flaws. So, if the husband is seen as a poor communicator,
the new person becomes an amazing listener.
Exactly. Or if the spouse seems preoccupied, the new person offers undivided attention. It's not necessarily genuine compatibility, it can be quite strategic.
Got it. And finally, gradual boundary pushing.
This is where an innocent-seeming friendship slowly but systematically escalates. Deeper personal disclosures, maybe light physical touch, emotional intimacy increases, subtly eroding the boundaries that were initially in place.
Yeah, you can see how that happens incrementally.
And putting this in the broader context again, Marcus Aurelius constantly emphasized recognizing patterns in human behavior, both in others and ourselves. The Stoic approach here is to step back, examine the situation with reason, ask those tough questions. What are the real long-term consequences here? What core values are being compromised? What kind of person do I actually want to be, and are my actions aligning with that?
It's about clear-eyed recognition, not blame.
Exactly. Self-awareness.
But the challenge, obviously, is that once that emotional investment takes root, thinking rationally becomes incredibly difficult, doesn't it?
Extremely difficult. That intense desire for validation, for feeling seen, it can just override even the best intentions. It clouds judgment.
So how did the Stoics suggest dealing with that?
Well, this is key. They stressed building emotional resilience before you need it, proactively.
Training in advance.
Yes. They practice specific exercises, mental exercises, to strengthen their ability to think rationally even when emotions were running high. They deeply understood that while we can't always control external events or other people's behavior,
we can control our own perceptions and responses.
Absolutely. That's Epictetus's core teaching, the dichotomy of control, right there in action, building that inner citadel.
Okay, so bringing this all together for you, our listener, whether you're married, single, whatever. How do you apply this knowledge? If you are married, understanding these patterns, maybe it helps you recognize vulnerability before it becomes a huge issue.
Right.
Asking yourself, are we showing signs of emotional neglect? Am I, or is my spouse, seeking validation elsewhere, even subtly? Have we maybe gotten complacent?
It's an invitation for introspection, definitely not accusation.
Yeah.
And the Stoics, they really believed in proactive virtue, not just waiting for problems, but actively strengthening your character, strengthening your relationships as an ongoing practice. So if you recognize these patterns in your own marriage, the path of wisdom, the Stoic path, is to address them directly, honestly with your spouse.
Well, that takes courage.
It absolutely takes courage, but that's how true strength, true virtue in the Stoic sense is built within a relationship.
And what if you're single and you see these patterns in someone you're interested in who's married?
Well, the ethical Stoic approach is pretty clear there. Encourage them to address their marriage directly. You don't exploit that vulnerability. Your own integrity is paramount.
Don't become the solution yourself.
Precisely. And what's really fascinating, what if you're the person recognizing these patterns in your own behavior? Maybe you're the one drifting.
Yeah, what then?
The Stoic path is pause, reflect deeply. Ask yourself, what am I truly seeking here? Is it validation, connection, just excitement? And then, can these needs potentially be addressed within my marriage? Have I actually clearly communicated my needs to my spouse? Or have I just assumed they know or should know?
That requires a lot of self-awareness. Brutal honesty sometimes.
It does.
And remember, the goal here isn't judging anyone. It's about understanding human psychology so we can all make better choices, build stronger, more resilient relationships. I love that Seneca quote you mentioned earlier. We suffer more in imagination than in reality.
It's so true.
Many of these problems, they might be solvable with honesty, with courage, with real effort. Maybe your spouse is simply unaware of your unmet needs. It's possible.
But addressing it requires that courage, that honesty, and prioritizing virtue, long-term integrity over immediate gratification. It's about choosing those preferred indifference wisely. That's a Stoic concept, meaning things like temporary emotional highs or external validation. Yeah, they might be preferred. We might like them.
But they aren't essential for our core virtue or lasting happiness.
Exactly. And certainly not worth sacrificing our integrity or the well-being of our core relationships for.
So, as you, our listener, move forward from this deep dive, consider this. It isn't about labeling anyone as easy prey or anything like that. It's really about understanding that we all have vulnerabilities, that human need for connection is incredibly powerful. And it's about using this knowledge, this understanding to protect ourselves, maybe protect others from situations that often lead to a lot of pain and regret. And instead, using it to build truly resilient character and stronger relationships.
The Stoics taught exactly that. True strength doesn't come from avoiding challenges or difficult feelings. It comes from facing them, but facing them with wisdom and with virtue. In our relationships, that means being proactive about connection, being honest, really honest about our needs, and making choices based on our deeply held values, not just our fleeting, momentary emotions. And remember that point. Wisdom without virtue can actually be dangerous. It can be misused.
That's a powerful thought. So the next time you encounter someone who seems to be in a vulnerable state, maybe a spouse seeking validation, or really anyone struggling with unmet emotional needs, pause and consider this. Your response in that moment, it says more about your character than it does about theirs.
Choose the path of virtue. Choose understanding. Choose genuine care for others' well-being. That, our listener, is the true wisdom of Stoicism. It's not just about understanding human nature, but about using that understanding to become better people. And maybe, just maybe, help build a slightly better world for everyone.